We can now start. Cool. So, welcome everyone. Today I'm going to take this session on becoming a senior front-end engineer. The reason for this is multiple. Okay, I myself have completed 7 years as a software engineer, mostly working on the front end, and lots of time I do get requests from people who are at least like 4+ years of experience, who are trying to become senior engineers but are facing challenges, right? And they want to know the right approach, the right technical knowledge, and the right non-technical knowledge for it. So that's what I'll be talking about today. So before I begin, let me just talk a bit about me so that you're aware who am I. Let me just zoom out here. Okay, so who am I? I'm a web developer with 7 years of experience building large-scale front-end applications. Currently, I am working as a software engineer 3 at Adobe. I love teaching, I love dancing. I have a YouTube channel called What the Code, okay, where I teach, and a Discord server of over 1,400 plus developers. We have conducted 2 meetups with that server. One physical meetup in Bangalore where we did hackathon session sort of thing. So if you're interested, you can join the server and for the upcoming updates. I have mentored and taught thousands of developers and made them a better developer. Some of my mentees work at Flipkart, Amazon, Freshwork, etc. I teach what I know and learn what I don't. Just a second. Was on unmute. Okay. So that's actually, if you want to become a senior front-end engineer, that is the gist of it. Okay, if you want to take anything from today's session, okay, that is this: teach what you know and learn what you don't. That's how you become a senior engineer. Okay, that is very short version of what this topic is about. But yeah, let's dive deep. So we'll be talking about the technical capabilities, okay, specifically for the front-end engineers, non-technical capabilities that applies to any engineer, okay, and how do you realize that you have become a senior engineer? Right? That should also be something that you should know, right? Because it's not just a tag. Okay, you think that you have got a tag of senior engineer, so you become a senior engineer. It's not necessary. Sometimes when you don't have a tag, also you become that. So yeah, that's about it. Uh, there is echo. Is anyone else also facing the issue of echo, or is the sound problem? You want to be sure so that to clearly hear what I'm saying. Okay, I don't see any other cuts. So there is echo. Ah, interesting. Not sure what I can do about it. Just give me 1 second. No worries. Let me just be right. I'm back. I hope it is better. We'll see. Um, cool. In case if you are not able to clearly hear me, let me know. But otherwise, I hope it is better. So yeah, we'll talk about the basics first. This is required not just for any uh, senior or it doesn't matter on the seniority level. You should be aware of these things. The first one being semantic HTML authoring. So everyone knows HTML. Obviously, you're a front-end developer, then you do know what HTML is, right? So that is fine, but you should be able to write semantic HTML authoring. You should be a semantic HTML author. Basically, that means that your code structure should not be just considering of divs, spans, and all those stuff which are just there for structuring your HTML, but it should also convey some meaning. We will dive deep into this going forward in the accessibility section. But for now, just understand that you should become a semantic HTML author. I'll be sharing the slides afterwards, like currently we don't get time to deploy it. I deployed and will share this slide so that you can get the links also. So here I have linked the Firefox documentation of HTML for you to understand all the different elements and stuff. Uh, Coming to the next point, which is CSS fundamentals. Okay. How to render your UI on not just one screen, on all type of screens. That means I'm talking about responsive UI. Okay, it can be in tablet, it can be phone, on paper. So sometimes when you give print, let's for example, if you have a website and you there is a common use case to take a print out of it website. Then you can even give media query print and structure your page so that it is structured properly for the print version. Then in speech, this is very, very important. Okay, this is for accessibility also. I have given a link here. If you open that link, it will clearly specify what exactly does it contain. It is a voice family which you can basically on your different locales, there are different versions. It says India is speaking or a person from US is speaking. The tone is different, their accent is different. Okay, then stress. Okay, see, these are all the header things. So you want to stress more, so it's a moderate, right? Voice volume, decibels, all of that. Okay. So that also can be managed by our CSS. So you should be aware of this. It depends on whether you have the use case of using this or not, but you should be aware of this. And there are other media queries also. Okay, so you should be aware of this. And CSS fundamentals, have given a link over here of web.dev. Yeah, to me, this is a very good and comprehensive resource to learn anything and everything about CSS. But don't restrict yourself to one resource. There are other resources also. But this is a very good resource that I would say. Coming to next, JavaScript in depth. Obviously, that is very much important as a front-end developer, right? Your browsers understands only one language, which is JavaScript, and maybe WASM, which is WebAssembly. Okay, but apart from that, if you are, let's say, you might have heard of other languages in which you can code your UI. Let's say there is GWT, Google Web Toolkit, there is Dart, and there are other languages. But those are converted into JavaScript before it's sent to the browser, right? So eventually it's JavaScript which your browser understands. So you should be able to understand JavaScript in depth. Keep learning as much as you can. This is what I do till date. I just keep learning whatever new I learn about it. Okay, because I don't think you can learn it completely, but just keep learning about it. Okay, keep going into depth of it. That will help you a lot. Right? That is the basics. That's irrespective of your experience. Coming to the fundamentals part. Okay. Now, the first thing that I will mention is the critical rendering part. A lot of times I have seen, even when I take interviews, okay, people are not aware of this, okay, which is a bit surprising to me that you should be aware of this. If you are not aware what this is, okay, it is basically whenever you try to access any website, the first page, most probably, let's say 100%, would be an HTML page. That HTML page, how does your browser parse it? Okay, how does your UI get rendered? There are different stages. Okay, there are mainly 5 which are mentioned. Right, one is HTML, creating HTML DOM, CSS form, okay, which is CSS object model. Then there is a render tree. Then there is layout. Then there is paint, and in some cases there is a reflow also. So again, that is all the details will be given in this link. So there is a Udacity course, free Udacity course, okay, which helps you learn this entirely. So you can definitely check that out. As I mentioned earlier, I will link this website and deploy it, and I'll share it with you. Right. Then you should be aware of what is DNS, how does it work, because this is very, very common question asked in interviews, and not just in interviews. You should be aware of how does it work. So when you click on a website, when you enter a URL on your website, how exactly does it reach to the server, and that server sends you back the HTML. Okay, that is something that you should be very well aware. Okay, so again, I have given a link here. You can open that and you can learn a bit about it. Again, this is not an exhaustive resource, but this is a very good resource that I found that you should start with to understand how DNS works. Okay. Going to next, learn about HTML. You will be surprised to know that lots of people, or even I am surprised to know that lots of people are not aware of different versions of HTML. There is at least 4, like 1, 1.1, 2, and 3. 3 is very much new. So if you have not used, that's understandable. But mostly you will be using 1.1 and some cases 2. But there are use cases for using each of the HTTP version. and you should be aware of that. And not just the versioning part, you should be aware of all the headers. Okay, not all the headers, but majorly used headers. The cache control header, the cookies header. Okay, how do you do authorization? Basically, it's authentication, but yeah, its name is authorization. So uh, all those parts are very basic and very fundamental of creating an API. Okay, so you should be aware of it. As a front-end engineer, your job is not just to render UI and manage the state and think of the performance. It is also to create an API contract. Your backend will job is to take the data from database, process it in such a way that the front end can use it. But there should be a contract which is agreed upon from both the backend and front end. So designing a good API is also part of it. Okay. So you should be aware of HTTP in that case, which version to use, when to use. Coming to next, browser dev tools. This is again obvious one. You should be aware of network, performance, and memory. These are the major ones I would say. Obviously, we use console and elements, right? To debug, we usually use console and elements. But network is again very important. We'll be diving deep into network tab later in the this session. Then the next coming is performance. Okay, you should be aware how to profile your app. Okay, know which process or which JavaScript file is taking longer and can we optimize it, can we not, how it. Then memory also, what to see if there are memory leaks for which app. Because sometimes in your application, it's not just your code that's running, there are the third-party analytics also running. You should be aware what is consuming how much memory. Okay. And also to identify memory leaks. So these are the tags that you should be aware of as a CTO. Okay. Then coming to next, which is web storage. You should be aware of these, at least these. There are other even databases, IndexDB, and there are web SQL, there are lots of other stuff, but you should be aware of at least these three. Local storage, session storage, and cookies. Okay, and when to use them. So that is very, very important. To a lot of people, when I take interviews and when I even go for solutioning, okay, when we are discussing solutions, people are not aware of HTTP only secure cookies. People are, that is a fresh knowledge to them, which is something that you should be very well aware. Again, I'm talking about with zero data. If you are experienced with less than year or two, then you may or may not go about this, but you should be aware of this. So when I say a senior engineer, what I imagine is if you are 4+ years of experience, you should be doing this. Okay. Sometimes it is less. Also, I know that bar has been raising since quite some time. That even people with 1 year experience are being asked all those things. I am very well aware of that. But to me, ideally, if you are 4+, then you should be able to understand. Is the voice breaking for everyone? Let me know. Yeah. No. Okay, fine. No worries. I am recording it. Don't worry. So don't worry. Cool. Thank you. And if you have any questions or anything, do put it in the chat. I will take a look at it later. Okay. But at the end, we will have a separate Q&A session, so you can even pause for now because if I have to scroll, I might miss question. So yeah, but take a note of your questions and please ask me. Coming to the next part, web security. Okay, I have not given here example because it contains a lot of it. Okay, you might be aware of some of them, right? Cross-site scripting, XSS, you'll be aware of clickjacking. Okay, there are different types of security vulnerabilities that can happen on a website. Given that the framework that we use, like React or Next or any other frameworks, or sometimes in our company there are built-in frameworks which are on top of either React or anything, or they're completely different. They do take care of most of these by default, but most use cases when we develop, especially in my experience that I've seen, we use a lot of iframes. Okay, and we try to inject, especially if you're doing micro frontend and stuff. It is very much uh, of importance that you know that how your website can be attacked, okay, maliciously, and you should be able to avert those in advance before even it happens. Okay, so you should have a very good knowledge of web security. So I have a link. I have not put it here. I forgot it, but I put the link in it as I told you. I'll share the website so you can get the link. That's a playlist of YouTube videos by some very good instructor that will help you understand the fundamentals of web security also. So in short, these are the web fundamentals that I would say you should know as a senior engineer. Okay. Going to the next one, command over the UI framework. Okay, that means whatever frameworks you are using. Okay, I assume most of you would be using React because that's the one that is going in the market currently. Okay, since quite some time and going forward. So you should be able to understand how the framework works internally. That means you should let's take example of React.js itself. You should know how the virtual DOM works. Trust me, I have taken a lot of interviews and very handful of people are able to explain me how virtual DOM works even on a high level. Okay, so that is concerning. Okay, it's not just you are able to just use the framework. You should be able to understand the framework at a certain experience. As I told you, 4+ years of experience, you should be able to do that. Because you are using this framework day by day, you should understand it also. Should be aware of the design patterns of the framework. Like in React specifically, there are compound components. So I'll explain you what do I mean by that. So let's say I'll take an example of HTML. Have you heard of an option HTML tag? Right? Can you use option HTML tag just like that without any parent or anything? You need to have it a certain parent select within which only you can use one option. Okay, so there are certain parents within which only you can use certain components. That is what compound component means. If you have worked with MUI, Material UI, or any other framework, you would have definitely seen cases of compound components. Let's say accordion in Material UI. You have an accordion, within you have accordion title, then you have accordion content, something like that. I don't remember the exact names, but this is one of the pattern, which is one is compound components. Okay, so you should be aware of these kind of design patterns in your specific framework. As of now, I'm talking about React. Then debugging in that framework. Okay, so for React again, profiler, how you are able to use the profiler to understand which of your components are rendering, re-rendering, and unnecessary re-rendering. Okay, or are rendering but are taking too much time to render, which is causing your app to be slow. Then you should be able to understand that and able to debug that. So React profiler, right? You should be able to know how to work with that. It's not just a dev tool, you can even use React profiler in your code. Okay. To send back into analytics. We'll talk about the logging part also going forward. Next part is optimizing the performance. Okay. The important part is here, not immaturely, but when needed. Usually people start writing code, which use callback, use demo, and all those stuff. Sometimes they even have ESLint rules which enforce that if you write a function or a value which is computed to use demo, use callback always. Using these hooks, okay, has a cost of itself. It will always, whenever it before it renders, before it goes to a function, it will always compare and check. So that has a cost. So you should be aware that you want that cost or not. So optimize the performance, not immaturely, but when needed. Okay, that is very, very important. You should definitely know how to optimize, but also only when needed. Going to the next part. Now, this is the question that I want you guys to answer. And yeah, you can unmute and answer, and or you can chat, send it in the chat. So the question is, what does it take to build large-scale front-end application? What does scaling mean on the front end? You can
I
say.
believe scaling is increasing the number of web pages or websites. If a website is static, means if we need to make it more interactive, means we need to scale the web page, like adding more components, making new interactive UIs and all like that. We have to make the web page redesign the things and all. I from my point of view, scaling means increasing the website's work performance and SEO, like that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Different take on scaling. Let's come to the basic. What does scale in general mean? Forget front end. What does scale when I say my website is now scaling? What does it mean? Anyone?
Like upgrading kind of stuff.
Not exactly the answer that I'm looking for.
The number of people using the website actually
Yes,
increases. So
exactly. That's what I'm looking for. So basically, your number of people that is using your website is increasing. That's the like most basic way of saying what scale is. Okay. Now, with the number of people, will anything else increase? Let's say with the number of people, number of devices increase. That means it's not just people who are watching in your monitor. It's currently the screen that you are seeing is a 32-inch monitor. Then there are 14-inch laptops, there are 16-inch laptops, there are tablets, there are phones. So now you have to take care of all those different UIs. And I'm not just talking about responsive UIs. I'm talking about the touch, the basically interaction method. In your laptop, it is mouse click. In your phone, it is touch. In your tablet, there is stylus. And for accessibility, there is accessibility APIs for screen readers or different other APIs. So again, that matters in scale because number of people increase, number of devices increase, number of way of interaction increase. Okay, so that is one part. Another number of people increasing. If you have hosted your website in a CDN, okay, because most of your assets are static, even a JavaScript bundle will be static. Right? At a given point, you will have only one version of your JavaScript being hosted. So number of people are going to increase accessing that. And when they're accessing that, you are trying to access an image again deployed somewhere, maybe in your CDN, maybe it is bundled together. So that's totally depending on your architecture. So there you have to take care of performance. Okay, we'll be talking about performance in detail. One more part. As the number of people increases, the region where they are, you have to take care of that also. Currently, let's say your users are in US, India, and other countries. Your users can now become in China, Japan, in Saudi Arabia. Now, in these different regions, they have their own way of dates, or own way of writing formats of numbers, own way, own language, definitely, and own way of writing language. If you go to Saudi Arabia, they do right to left. We write from left to right. Again, that's a different thing. Again, part of the scale. This is, we'll talk about this in detail. But yeah, these are the different type of scale I'm talking about. The performance part, the adaptive UI part, the internationalization part. Okay. So scale on the front end. Again, I'll just list topic. Adaptive UI. Then we'll be talking about observability and monitoring. Application deployment infrastructure. So you should be aware, even though you are doing just the front end part, you should be aware that how your entire application is deployed. What is the infrastructure of your entire app, which becomes very complex in large scale business applications. Then web app performance optimization, accessibility, international. Okay. So talking about adaptive UI, as I already mentioned, okay, you should be aware of to adapt your UI to different environment. It's like screen sizes, like dark and light mode. Now even OS is out of the box. Your preferences, whether you prefer light mode, dark mode. Okay. Then interaction methods, like mouse, keyboard, touch, stylus, screen reader. There is one more, if you have heard of, like reduced motion. Some of the people who have some accessibility issues, some disability, they are not able to deal with lots of flashing lights or lots of animations. So for them, there is something which is known as preferred reduced motion. So for if you use that media query in your app, you can choose to show a different version of your app which has less animations. Okay. Going to next part, which is observability and monitoring. Okay, this is very important. Can someone let me know if you're hearing of this for the first time, if anyone, or if you have heard about this, can someone tell me what it is? Let me just know what it is, or if you have heard about it for the first time, let me know. Okay, so I'm assuming most of you have heard about it. Nice. Can someone tell me what does it mean, observability and monitoring, and why is it important? No one said anything when I said you have never heard of it. and now you are not answering also. No, a bit of it. Don't worry, there is no right or wrong answer. There is no points here. There is no exam. I'm just trying to make it interactive so that it's not a lecture, it's a session where it's a two-way communication.
Observability on top of my head, I can think of is like how you react to the events. It's like reacting to your environment. I think I am giving this example based on my experience with observables. So I think observability term is very generic. So it's like reacting to something. It can be
Okay.
anything. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, which is a very nice way of putting it. Good. Good. So let's move on. Okay. So in terms of your software architecture, observability is the practice of instrumenting systems to gather actionable data, depicting not only when and where an issue is occurred, but more importantly, why it occurred. Okay. So it is the practice of putting your code together in such a way that let's say you guys have heard of on call. Most of you might have heard of on call, where we are on call, right? That means for a week or so, for some time duration, you have to monitor the systems. You have to be present when there's a production issue. So let's say production issue comes. Now what do you do? Like how do you debug that production issue? You will need logs, right? You will need different kind of matrices to tell you what actually went wrong, how it went wrong. That's what observability helps in. Okay. Now, another thing which is monitoring. Monitoring is important, is actually an important action in achieving observability. It is the act of collecting regular data about system, so performance can be viewed and tracked. So if you have seen, how many of you have seen any dashboards like Splunk dashboard, Grafana, or New Relic? Have you heard of these softwares, applications? Okay, if you're not answering, I'll take that as a no. So these are the applications which you use to monitor and observe your applications once they are deployed to the production. Okay, to collect logs regarding them. Okay, so whenever a user takes any action, then what did they do, when did they do? Okay, everything is mentioned in there. Obviously, you have to set it up, it doesn't automatically come out of the box. You have to take the API, you have to take it in your code and stuff. But these are the different tools. Again, I mentioned them: New Relic, Splunk, Grafana. There's a Prometheus. Prometheus is mostly for Matrix. Okay. So,
even Sentry, right?
Even Sentry, correct? Yes, Sentry. Yes. So there are again different more than there are plenty of. Okay, then there's one which is known as open telemetry, which is an open source way of standardized way of doing the telemetry logs. Okay, so again, I linked that in this slides when I put it. So don't worry about that. Let's talk about telemetry data types. So basically, observability is collecting telemetry data. Telemetry, I can tell you what telemetry. Tele is like telepathy, like remote. Consider tele as remote. Metry is measurement. Remotely doing measurement of your application is sort of what telemetry means. Okay. Now let's understand what different data types comes within this telemetry. So there are events. Okay. A discrete action happening at any moment. You have a e-commerce web application. A person is buying something from the application. That's an event. He goes, he adds that to the cart, does checkout, does the payment. Okay, those are different events that you can track. Matrices, numeric measurements. Okay, for this I'll give you an example of how many of you are aware of core web vitals. Can anyone unmute or chat in the chat? Tell me what is core web. What are the core web vitals? I will be talking about them in the performance section, but just want to know if anyone is aware about that. Okay, I assume that none here are aware of it. So basically, it's a way of measuring the performance and the user experience of your web application. There are three main core web vitals. One is LCP, largest contentful pane. One is first input delay, and one is cumulative layout shift. Okay, again you can learn about them in detail, but basically these are the matrices. There are some like LCP should be less than 2 seconds, or the FID should be something some seconds. There's a range. Okay, so what you can do is you can create a metric so that you can measure an average of your LCP, average of your FID, average of your CLS with different consumers, so that you know, okay, in the field data, which is when you are app is in production and you are collecting these matrices, it's known as field data. So your field data, how much is the average that is coming? Because when you develop your application, you're developing your MacBook Pro, okay, and you're developing with stage or dev environment, you might get a very good score. But what is happening in the actual production is very, very important. Okay, so you can collect that kind of metrics. Again, you can collect different kind of metrics, which are product matrices, right? Product related matrices, like how many what at what time do people order the most? Okay, let's say independent sales coming, what how much sale did we do? Okay, how much people did placed order, successful orders? Those are different metrics. Finding maximum minimum. Okay, if you want to know what is your maximum time taking for LCP, minimum time for LCP, largest content footprint. All those kind of matrices you can get the data using different softwares for that. One of them is Prometheus. Next, logs. This is very, very common. I'm sure you might be aware of what are logs. We, anyways, day in and day out, we write console.log. But this is not that log. These are logs that you write to any of your telemetry service provider or analytics. Let's say if you're using Azure, if you're using AWS, or you're using any other Sentry, then you are writing your logs and storing it somewhere. So that later, when you have to debug, in case you have to debug, you know what exactly happened in the system. So these are lines of text the system produces where a certain code blocks get executed. Right? So let's say you are doing a fetch request. So you will put a log before, after, you will get the response time. Okay, you will see what the response was. You will hide the sensitive data, right? You will hide the token stuff. Okay, what parameters were sent. Okay, what did the API respond? You want to know all of those stuff. So that are your logs. And coming to the last one, which is traces. Traces is not nothing but combination of your logs. So logs for one application. Now combine the logs for multiple applications. Many not application, different part of your application. Let's say front end. Then there's a middle layer. Let's say backend for front end or GraphQL for your anything. Then there are the different services. Then there are databases. Then you have in your typical infrastructure, there are multiple pieces of services that are involved. Okay. And you want to connect each of them, that okay, this action when the user clicked on buy, it started from the front end, it went, okay, it went made an API call, it went okay, failed at the payment. So that entire trace, okay, that is very, very important to understand the chain of events. This clearly measured chain of events or transactions between different components in a microservices ecosystem. Okay. Any questions here? I will take a pause over here because observability and monitoring something which, based on a response, I think is something that you are hearing for the first time. And if you have any questions regarding this, please ask. I can take a 2-minute pause. Also take a seat. Okay, cool. I don't see any questions. Let's move to the next one. Application deployment infrastructure. Very, very important for you understand. Once you have written your code, once you have push it in your GitHub, what is happening next? How is it getting deployed? Usually we ignore this part. Usually there's another team, SRE team or DevOps team, which takes care of it. But as when you become senior, you are expected to do all this, because when you are on call or when you are debugging this application, you should be aware of where exactly it is getting blocked. And you should be aware, you might not have access to certain systems, but you should be able to exactly point, okay, this is where it is getting blocked. Now reach out to this person, okay, which has the proper access. So Nginx, again, to deploy your majorly in front-end, I've seen people use Nginx, okay, for backend application. If you're using Java, then there are Apache and other servers, but mostly in the front-end, I've seen people use Nginx. It behave as your load balancer. It also behaves as a reverse proxy. Okay, if you are not aware of these terms, I would suggest you please Google those, because in this session I cannot cover everything. But yeah, if you definitely Google those stuff out. Then containerization of your application, Docker, Kubernetes. Usually, big tech companies have their own way of doing Dockerization in Kubernetes. So the companies that I have worked, Walmart and Adobe, these are big tech companies. So they have their own way of doing things. Okay, they are using underneath Docker, they are using underneath Kubernetes, but they have their own way of doing it, own way of orchestrating these things. So you should be aware of that. Coming to the next CDN, how to deploy stuff on a CDN? How does CDN work? Where exactly your CDNs are there present? Okay. If I want to define CDN to you, it's like a server which will just when you ask it responds you back. It doesn't do any computation. Okay. If I ask for an image, it will return. If I ask for a JavaScript button, it will return to me. It's just as simple as that. Those are what I would say are CDNs. Content delivery network. That's it. They don't do any computation. Okay. Then your database cluster. How is your database be? Even though you're not writing SQL queries to extract information, okay, you should be aware of your architecture of your database. Okay. Again, this is for senior engineers. Currently, as I have 7 plus experience, so I am aware of how it works, and I'm trying to be even more aware of how it works because it's important for me to know end to end how it works. In usually, if you have interviewed for it companies, or you might have heard of that. People ask you about your application and then they try to dig deeper. At certain point, you hit a brick wall. You are like, "Ye part मैंने नहीं देखा था. I don't know that part. This is not my concern. I'm a front-end developer." At a certain level of experience, it is acceptable. After 4+ years of experience, it's not acceptable that you're not at least slightly aware of how your infrastructure works. Okay. So you should be aware very well about that. And it's not just for interviews. I'm giving example of interviews because this is where you come to know whether a person knows or not. But it's not just about interviews, even it's for your day-to-day job also. That's how you know, okay, you have a good grip over your infrastructure, that your manager can entrust you with different features, and he can just blindly trust you, okay, if any of this guy is very technical. Okay, and that trust is very hard to win. Only when you have very good technical knowledge. Okay, next, moving to data centers and cloud instances. So there are different ways of deployment. People are mostly using now cloud first. Okay, so they might be using Microsoft, AWS, Azure, right, GCP. But there are certain data center based deployment also happening. Let's say you have different data centers where that's your own prem, that's your own company own. So you should be aware where exactly they are. Okay, how exactly they are structured. Okay, if there is AWS being used, then what are the EC2 instances or what are the SD storage? Okay, you should be aware of the infrastructure. Then upstream and downstream services. Basically, whatever services are involved in your front end, basically whatever you are calling. Okay, you are calling, let's say you are calling some, I'll just give you an example of say payment service. You are calling order management service. There are different services that are involved. Those services in turn will be calling other different services. Okay, so you should be aware of what those services are and how they are architected. I'm not asking you to go to the Java code or the Golang code or the code of it and review the POCs and stuff, but you should be aware of how they are architected. Okay. Next, coming to the web app performance optimization. So here basically network tab. Okay, request. You should be aware of how your if you go to the network tab, you will see a waterfall. Okay, of requests. Okay, first you might make this HTTP request, then there's this some time that took to make that TCP/ICP connection and make that HTTP request, and how much time it will take to respond, how much time, and entire waterfall you should be aware of. Usually when people talk about web app performance optimization, they directly jump into core web vitals. That is way of measuring, yes, that Google provides, but that is not the ideal way of approaching optimization. Okay, you should first talk about your network tab to understand how you are actually when your request is click on the URL, how is it going to reach the database? Okay. Next, optimize the render and parse blocking assets. Okay, so if you remember, I mentioned something which is known as critical rendering part at the start. That will come as part. This will come as part of that. Okay, so you should know what are your render and parse blocking assets. So usually your render blocking asset will be something, let's say you're calling a Google fonts in your CSS. That is your render block. Okay, so you have a script tag in your HTML. That is usually parse block. So you should be aware how to use defer, async. Okay, then how to use preload your assets, okay, which are above the fold. Above the fold meaning it's a digital website. Whatever you see when you land on a website, that is above the fold. Once you start scrolling, that is below the fold. So whatever is here there on above the fold, that is loaded first. So preload or prefetch those assets. Okay, there are different resource hints that you should be aware of. Okay, so that's there. Then first load times. Okay, so there are different. So there's one is first load time, then there is second and further load time. For the first load times, you should use resource hints, script attributes differ async. Okay, assets minification, minify your CSS, JS bundles, budget your bundle size. So yeah, let's say you should be having a very strict, let's say 3 MB or I'm talking about MBs. Let's say assume 3 MB is your JavaScript bundle size. You should never increase that. Doesn't matter how much your code increases. You should go back, you optimize, you see what you can do, what you can remove, what you can lazy load. But your bundle, there should be a specific budget that it should never cross 3 MB. And if it is crossing 3 MB, there has to be a very good reason that it is. And then you create a new budget. Okay, it should never cross 3.5, something like that. Optimizing your images, okay, using WebP format for rendering. But when they download, make it JPEG so that because there is an issues with rendering your WebP in different in different applications. So for rendering in the UI, use WebP. But when they try, if there is the image is downloadable or something, make sure that it is downloaded in JPEG or anything. Lazy load, okay, which is lazy load your code, lazy load your assets. Okay, so only the code which is required should be sent, and when the user takes a certain action, then only send the other code, okay, to the from the server to the client. Optimize long running task, use web workers. So basically, a worker is nothing but a short-lived process, okay, which runs on a separate thread. So if there is some process in your application that is taking a long time, so I will give you a live example, not live example, example that you had to use. So in one of our application in Walmart, we had to do sorting on client side. For some reason, it was not possible on the server, but it had thousands of rows. It was very difficult. The app was getting frozen. The browser was giving up on us. So we had to create a worker thread and move the sorting part just over it. Okay. So that's how we optimize long running tasks. Okay. Then resource delivery, as I already mentioned, content delivery network. Okay. And optimizing third-party tasks. Basically, you will have analytics, you will have telemetry, you will have other things which are basically tracking the user's activity to get better data. But those are not your main JavaScript. Those are just additional third-party JavaScript. So you can offload them in different worker threads, and there are different applications which help you. There are different libraries that help you with that. One of them which is PartyTown. Okay, so you can use that to offload your analytics or any kind of JavaScript which is not required on your main thread. So okay, I know there's a lot of stuff, but yeah, it takes this to become a senior engineer. So as I told you, what I talked about here was first load time. Now we'll be talking about second and further load times. So what your user has reached your website once, now is logging the read, or is just hitting your URL again. So now what is important is caching. Okay, HTTP caching. Because the server can instruct the proxies and clients about what to cache and for how long to cache. Basically, there are two types of caching. One is private caching, which is very specified to your client. So any data which is specific to a user which he gets after logging in, those should be stored in a private cache. Any data which is public, let's say your listing page, or your go to Amazon, and without your logging in, you can see the product listing, right? So all those kind of things you can store in public or shared cache. There are different ways of doing it. You can achieve that, okay, using HTTP headers itself. So yeah, that is about the second important note. Now let's talk about accessibility. Let me just sip some water. So ensure, what is accessibility basically? Okay, ensuring that everyone, including with people with disabilities, can still interact in your website in a meaningful and equal way. Okay, so that is what accessibility on the web means. The WHO estimates that around 15% of the world's population, that is over 1.3 billion people, self-identify as having disabilities. Okay. And What are the different types of disabilities that you need to be concerned of? Visual impairments, like people who are colorblind or partially blind, okay, who have mobility impairments, let's say they are amputee or they are not able to use their hand properly. Okay. Hearing impairments, okay. For them you can provide closed captions. And if you see there are some news channels or some conferences where they have someone who is doing sign language just besides the person who is speaking. Right. Cognitive impairments, this includes ADHD and other parts. Okay. And then there is seizures and vestibular. So we already talked about this when I talked about prefer reduce motion. People, if you go to Instagram, there is something. There will be some person. There will be some attire, and then there will be flashes, and then they turn into some other attire, magic. But that magic can cost someone's life. So that can cause seizure to some person. So those kind of things come under seizure and vestibular disorders. So these are the disabilities that you should be aware of that can be triggered or can be restriction for people to access your web application. Right? So you should be able to make your app accessible in such a way that these people to use them. But you might ask me, why should I be concerned about that? Like, I know that most of the people who use my application are completely able, and even if they are not, I don't want to waste my resources on as a company. I'm talking, not as an engineer, as a company. Why would I waste my resources to make the website accessible where I can just deploy that person to create few more features? Well, in the end, it's all about money, right? So let's see what is the potential opportunity that is being missed when people do not make website accessible. Okay. So according to some American Institute of Research, the disposable income which disabilities person is around 490 billion, just almost around 500 billion. Then people with disabilities are also a part of larger network of family members. I'll explain you this. Let's say you have some person in your relation or in your friends who is a differently able person, and there are some services, some products which are helping them do normal tasks. Okay, even with their disability. Wouldn't you be encouraged to use their services or product a little bit, right? So that means that including all of that, it is 53% of all the consumers, the disability market. Okay. So money is solved, right? So there is money if you want. Then if you are trying to deploy your app in different countries such as Canada, United Kingdom, Japan, Australia, European Union, all these places, like there are strict law for accessibility. Okay. In fact, top 500 e-commerce website, 412 have been solved with lawsuit. Okay. And usually the first lawsuit is for their website and second is for their mobile. So if you don't want to get into legal troubles in these countries and ship your software and earn money, then obviously you will be accessible. Now, how to develop accessible webs? I already mentioned in the start. It is very simple. Use semantic HTML attribute. Become a semantic HTML author. Okay. How do you do that? So let me give you an example. This is a non-semantic version of HTML. Okay, where there I'm using a span to, let's say, I think this is a title, then the home about, okay, this is navigation, which I'm again using anchor text. Then I'm using a div for a header. Then there are some, I think this is my subheading where I'm using some vision clients. When you look at this website with CSS, we can make it look good. Okay, it will be good. So look, appearance is not matter, as I have mentioned. Use HTML elements to structure your content based on each element's meaning, not appearance. Appearance can be taken care of by CSS. You should convey the meaning. Now the semantic version of this HTML is this, where I have a header, where I am saying it's h1, this is my main heading. Okay. Then there is a navigation. Then there is a main part of my app. Within that there is a header. Above there is a section where there is a subheading vision. And then there are talking about two things which come in the p tag. Again, there's a different section of clients, which is a subheading, and then the footer. This is giving clear meaning to your browser. Okay, this is how your app is structured. This will help the accessibility API for other applications like screen reader to convey these meaning to people with disabilities. Okay, the only difference between this and this is only for people who are completely normal. Okay, and this is for people who are bit differently. So this doesn't restrict people with who are completely normal. This is completely fine for them also. Okay, so here you're not restricting anyone. Here you are restricting certain set of people. Okay, so make sure to write simultaneously. Now that could be another argument, and which is a valid argument, that most of the applications that we write nowadays, okay, React application or a component that we make, we have to use divs because we have to structure our application in such a way that we'll have to use classes and stuff, and we will have to use divs. I agree. In that case, also there is a way to make them accessible, which is known as ARIA, which is accessible rich internet application. So a set of attributes you can add to your HTML elements to increase their accessibility. Okay, there are some rules, state, properties that you can add so that the accessible technologies, via the accessibility APIs, can understand the meaning of your different components in an application. Then there is a authoring practice guide provided by WAI ARIA. Okay, I'll just open that link. If you see here, there are different parts of commonly used components: alerts, dialogues, accordions, breadcrumb, checkbox, disclosure, different things. So if you click on any of those, let's say you want to make an accessible accordion, there is complete guidance given how you can make it. Okay, what is required? This is what, not how. This is what is required to make it. Now, if you want to know how, then there's an example section. Click on that example. You will see a complete UI with code, exactly how you can make an accessible accordion. Okay, so there's a role. Okay, there's an ARIA expanded. There are different properties as I mentioned. So now you don't have a reason to get that I want to make an accessible website, but I don't know how to. You know how. You know what is needed. You know how it can be done. It's only amount of your intent and bandwidth that you want to use to make accessible applications. And trust me, I have been working for Adobe for more than a year. There is no application in Adobe, even B2B application, okay, which is not accessible. We have proper accessibility testing going on before we release a production. And there's a certain score we have to meet before it becomes an accessible application, before it goes to production. Okay. So if you're working in this large scale application in this enterprise companies, you have to make sure that your app is accessible. Let's talk about internationalization. Okay. Again, this is part of your scale. When your app scales, it will scale in different region. Okay. If it is people of different regions are using it, then there are what are the different things involved. Okay. Translating the text content in their language, as well as bi-directionality. I told you, right? Left to right languages, right to left languages. Adapting the date format, some of us use DDMMY, some of them use MMDY, some use something else. Number formatting, let's say in our currency, we have comma after every 2 digits. In US, after first 2 digits there's a comma, and then after every 3 digits there's a comma. That you have to take care. Correlation sorting. So let's say you are having a language which is right to left render. Now, how do you sort? Do start ends with, starts with? How do you do the sort? Okay, how do you collate? Search, how do you search? Starts with, end with, what do you use? Like, there are different complexity in one, so you should be aware of how you do this, how to achieve this. Now let's come to the non-technical capabilities. These are all about technical capabilities. Let's focus on non-technical first. PR is very, very important. As a senior engineer, you have the responsibility of keeping your code repo clean and not let anyone pollute it. Okay. So with every PR, the code quality has to be maintained. You have to review that. You have to review that established patterns that can be subjective to your company. Okay. That what are the established patterns now as per your company, because that is very much our perspective. But they should be followed. But they should be followed for all of them who are contributing to that. Readability over fancy code. There are different ways of achieving things. If you want to convert a string to a number, you can just add plus in JavaScript on front of it. It will be converting it to a number. But does that convey the meaning? No. You should either use number constructor or you should use parse int. Right. So readability over fancy code. Drive meaning do not repeat yourself. Basically, if any code is getting repeated multiple times, then you should make sure that it should follow drive principle, create a common util function, but not at the cost of over abstraction. Sometimes you should let your code be repeated, because if you try to abstract it and make it a common util, that util becomes super complicated for people to understand or even build upon. Okay, so you have to have the to make sure, okay, where you should follow drive, where you should not. Test the code. Okay, whatever PR has been raised, test it locally, or if you have a build ID, test it the build ID. Okay, definitely test the code. This is not about unit test. Definitely you should make sure that the unit tests are returned. But test the code that is raised by PR in different edge cases. Usually as a developer, we have the urgency, we have like you fatapat code karke bas PR raise karne. That's what we think. So it is the responsibility of the person who is reviewing the code that okay, I check out the code and I test with different edge cases whether it's working fine or not. 90% it will fail. I'm talking about my experience. Whenever I test code, okay, 90% of the time I find some edge case where it doesn't work. This is now being identified earlier in the PR itself before it goes to production or the QA, which is very good. So you test the code. Now talking about comments, now you will be leaving comments. Leave comments as a constructive feedback with proper justification. It's not just like change this, do this, why have you done this? Don't be passive aggressive. Okay. And even if you're not being passive aggressive, how your comments will be taken by the person who has SMPR, you should be aware of that. Why have you done this? That kind of comments are not constructive, definitely not constructive, and they can be taken in a wrong way. That why is he asking me like that? So there's an art of writing comments, and you should be writing in a polite way with constructive feedback with proper justification. That do not do this because it will have these consequences. If you do this, this will help you with this. Be more constructive, write more detailed feedback in your comments. Okay. Next, be the go-to person. Okay. So if you, I am sure you will be doing this, that there is always a person whom you go to when you are stuck with something. When you're stuck with something for a long time, for you have spent hours, days on it, and you're like, no man, I cannot proceed. And you know there is a one person in your company. If you go to him, he will resolve it. So you have to be that go-to person. Now, how do you be that go-to person? How do you become that go-to person? You have to become an excellent debugger in a problem solver. And that happens by not giving up. The only difference between the first person who was not able to do it and who is second person is the second person is not afraid to debug the code. He is not afraid, okay, if I go one level beneath, I'll not understand the code. That fear is not. And he doesn't give up. Okay. So I used to be the first kind of person to leave. Okay, that I need someone, okay, some senior engineer. But now I am at the level that people come to me and they are stuck for in anything for multiple days. And they come to me, I sit at them. I remember this one instance where this person was stuck for like multiple days or something. I sat with him on a call for 2 hours. He solved it. Okay, and he also felt very good. Okay, he was able to solve because I made him debug. I did debugging for him. I made him debug that. Okay, what happens if we go next? What happens if we go here? Add a log here. Add a debug. I made him debug, and he also appreciated that fact. Okay, that he said I tell you his exact word. He told me, "You make me more clever." He said that's what his exact word was. He was trying to appreciate me. He was uh, English was not his native language, but yeah, he was trying to. So you have to be that go-to person. You have to become that go-to person. Then take initiatives and do POC. If you see a problem in your product, if you see a feature in your product that can be done, or if you see a process of engineering that you can speed up, let's say your build time is 45 minutes, you see a scope of reducing that. Okay. Any of the problems that you see that you can solve technically, okay, take it up and solve it. Try to solve it in your free time. Okay, I know we don't have free time, you're always busy, but try to make some time and try to do that. Whenever you do something which is not expected of you additionally on top of what you expected of you, okay, that will help you come out of the crowd. You will be noticed as a separate person who is doing something different. Okay. Come up with proof of concept and demonstrate it to a product and project managers. Okay, you find a problem, you found the problem. Now if it's related to product, demo it to the product manager. If it's related to engineering process, demo it to your project manager or anyone in the leadership for that matter. Demo it. This is something that I found an issue. This is a minimal word solution of it, minimal version of solution of it. Can we invest time in this to solve this so that our customers will be happy or our build time will become faster and basic, something like that. Okay. Another very important, become a product engineer. What does mean is focus on user experience first and then on the technical challenges. Usually what happens is when the product manager comes us and uses, okay, we have to implement this, we have to implement this. We are like, nahi, ye nahi hoga because our current code is this, our current code is this, oh, this is technically difficult, oh, we have never done this, it is difficult, is that. We try to give several reasons not to do it instead of thinking of few reasons of how can we achieve it. Okay. So become a product engineer. Have that mindset. Okay, you are not an engineer who is just doing coding. You are someone who is trying to make a product that makes the life of the user of the product easy. And for that, sometimes you will have to even change your architecture. You will have to do tough coding. Okay, you will have to do a lot of problem solving. But that is the challenge. That's what helps you become a good engineer. Okay. So become a product engineer. That's what I would say. Become a demo expert. Okay, so very important. If you want to be noticed in a larger audience, including the leadership. As a front-end developer, it's mostly 90% our responsibility to demo any code, even if there are changes only in the backend. Right? So we already have that advantage that demo will be given by us. But whether you will be given the demo or someone else, that is totally up to you. Because whenever given chance, you have to demo it in such a way that every time your product manager or a project manager reaches out to you, that you will be doing that demo. There are some important stakeholder involved, and they know this is the right person who will do the demo. Okay. You know the use case of the requirements that are developed, prepare a demo script, share it with your product manager, project manager. And whenever you give demo, speak slowly and speak confidently with a loud voice. Okay, very important. Next part, and I guess that is the last part, is become a manager of your career. Discuss about your career progressions with the manager at the start of the cycle rather than the end of the year. Usually people at the last quarter, they ask, okay, sir, promotion kab hoga, ye hoga. No, that's not the right time to talk. The right time to talk is the start of the cycle. That please guide me so that in certain time I become capable enough to step to the next level. Okay, and whenever I am going off track, please let me know. This is how you talk with them. Have and schedule quarterly check-ins with him, or him or her, whoever it is. Okay, and get his feedback. Okay, and inform about the challenges that you are facing. Okay, so very important. People usually we think, okay, manager is very busy. Okay, he doesn't have time and this and that. No, quarterly once and half an hour meeting can be scheduled with him. Okay, if not, then think about it because you have to progress in your career. You have to make sure that your manager notices what you are doing, that he is aware that you want to grow in your career, and these are the challenges you are facing. How he can help with that, and what is the path? He can provide you exact path. Okay, if you do this in this company, you will be able to progress to the next level in this time. Okay. So yeah, that is about everything I wanted to talk about. Okay, with the technical capabilities, non-technical capabilities. Now is the time for Q&A. And if you are planning to leave the session, I would highly request you to give me a feedback on topic. Okay, how you like the session, how it was. Okay, it doesn't matter if you are paid or not. That's completely fine because it is a pay what you want. If you join for free, it's completely fine. And those who paid, I really appreciate it. Okay, but I would highly request you please leave a feedback. Okay, on topic. Okay. And now is the time for Q&A. So please go ahead and ask questions. We have 20 more minutes.
It was a great session, Apur. I really appreciate your time and your effort on doing this. So the thing is like, most in the current market, like most people prefer React.js or Next.js as the front-end framework for the static web pages. So, what is your take on this? Is React or Next.js? Next.js is a kind of implementing the React in the Next.js itself with inbuilt routing and all. So, what is your take on this? Is React or Next.js is the only framework mostly used, or like other frameworks like PHP, Laravel, or like Angular? So these are also present in the market. Like mostly when I saw in the job market, they are looking for React or Next.js only. So your take on this?
Okay, good question. So basically, you have to know what the market uses majorly. The market uses majorly currently as of now React. Reason being, there is one very simple reason. The community is large. The community of libraries built in coordination with React is large. Okay, there's specific routers for it. There's specific what is it, data fetching libraries for it. There's specific table libraries for it. And those libraries are used by lots of developers and contributed by a lot of developers. Okay, then there is framework motion if you're aware, then animation library. If you go with React, right, not just I'm talking about React because it is currently in market. If basically any library which has support from lots of communities that where you know that any problem you face is already solved. Okay, and you don't have to invest your own time in solving that. Usually companies will use that because they don't want to waste time in solving problems of framework. They want to invest time in solving problems of the customers. Okay, or in creating better products. So usually people will use any people or any companies will use any library or any framework which has a large community. Okay, I know I'm aware Laravel and all those are also and they have been PHP has been before React, but with every certain time of period, let's say a decade or so, there's a change. There's something which comes and which and that's totally dependent on the luck of the developers that it becomes hype. Okay, and people start using it. So that people start using the other things less. So currently it's the market of React and it has been since many years. And as far as I can tell, it will be for coming years also. So it's all about market. It's not about there are pros and cons of every library. Okay, and if you want, you can use it in your personal projects. But if you want to grow in your career, you have to make sure that okay, whichever is being used by the market major, whichever is being used by the companies major, that is where you have to show it.
So hi Purva. So by the way, it was a great session. We met after a long time. Yeah. But my question was like, I mean, we use already the libraries, I mean, top-up framework, right? For CSS thing I was taking. So they are already taking care of accessibility, right? So, I mean, what we can improve on top of that? That's what my question.
Good, good, good. So not every library is very much taking care of all the accessibility. Okay, there are certain libraries which are in terms of React that I'm aware that are taking care of accessibility. One is Redux UI, one is Reach UI, and then one which I work with, React Spectrum. Again, that's an open source library by Adobe. You can check it out. So these are certain libraries which take care of accessibility. But even it doesn't mean that if you are building your application with components from this library, that your application is accessible. Those certain components that you use are accessible, but there are certain requirements by your product, okay, which are not taken care in mind when developing these components, and they might your entire app, your individual components might be accessible because of these libraries, but your entire application, your entire page may or may not be accessible. Okay, so you have to make sure that your entire page is accessible. So just it's simple. If you have a MacBook, go to VoiceOver, okay, and try to understand if you are able to understand your application. Use keyboard, use tab, use arrow keys, use enter space wherever however the accessibility guidelines tell you, and see if you are able to access your entire page with just the keyboard and just ability to hear it from the voice.
Yeah, makes sense. And one more thing, I mean, regarding that core web vitals, okay. So in our product, okay. So the thing is like, I mean, we are on the first landing page only. We are making a heavy API call that is based on that our entire application will be driven. So I can see there are, I mean, right now it is taking around 4 to 5 seconds max. I mean, five seconds at least So how I can optimize that using the web vitals, because we are not painting any meaningful there in the these things right, because we are making an API call that is heavy and which will drive our entire application.
Okay, good question. So majorly, okay, 99% of the time, performance on front end is 1% of what you can do. It's mostly your database that needs improvement. Okay, it's 99% of the time that it's your database which requires improvement and not any other layer, especially not front end. So you said your API itself is taking a long time. That means you cannot do anything on the front end. The things that you can do on the front end, you might already be doing. So if you talk about core web vitals, for LCP, you preload that asset. You first of all deploy it on a CDN, and you preload that asset. Okay, that image, whichever is your largest content component. And for FID, first input delay, make sure that you load as small JavaScript bundles as possible. Okay, so that your FID will be fast. About community layout shift, you just take care that there's nothing, there's no shift happening in your layout. Basically, if there's an image that is supposed to be rendered, but it is taking time to be rendered, then occupy, just have a hide and width so that it doesn't pop up like this. Okay, if you're having a error in a model, let's say there's a model and there's an error, and error should not suddenly come up. You should make sure that okay, people are aware of there should be a post. So see, if talking about core web vitals is easy, and core web vitals will not solve your API issues. It will always be there. And as I told, 99% time, it's a database which needs performance improvements, not any other way.
Yeah, that's what I was also guessing. I mean, sometimes we need, I mean, the backend will be also the cause here to having a performance impact, because sometimes maybe API may be taking more time to give us the data. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this I was curious about. I mean, what we can do in that case. Yeah, yeah. So got your input. Yeah. Thanks.
Hi, Apro.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for taking this session. And I have one question. Like in backend, we have a microservice architecture. So, if one service is down, so other service is working expected. What do you think about the micro front end in the front end application? And do you think like for creating the larger application, we need to create a micro front end application or monolithic application?
That totally depends on the use case. And first of all, the example that you gave of microservices, I would not say is correct. What you microservices means your services have different, basically a logical unit of a service is a different unit. It doesn't mean that if one service is down, the second will take the back of it. That's not what microservices mean. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay. And in terms of your actual question about the monolithic front end versus micro front, that totally depends on your use case. For example, a part of your application is which exists. If it is supposed to be used as multiple places, which is there in our Adobe, there are lots of applications of our things which are supposed to be used in different places. Then that individual logical part can be made as a micro frontend so that it can be injected as iframe or any in another application and can be loaded. Okay. But if you don't have such use case for your application, then there is no need of creating micro frontend. Just because it is trending, just because it is the new way of doing stuff, doesn't mean that you should do it. If you have particular use cases, one is that that logical unit of your application is being used at multiple places. Second, if there are multiple teams building a same application with different parts of the same application, and they have their own deployment cycle, they have their own team, then you can choose to have that. So only if they have a use case, go for it. If you don't have a use case, more traditional front-end.
Hi, Apurva. First of all, great session, man. This is my first webinar, like since my college time, and I think I have learned a lot today. So thanks so much for doing it, first of all. Second thing, I just wanted to talk about when you were talking about the accessibility section, right? So you showed us an example where we had a lot of depth and how you replaced them with the semantic HTML elements. And you told us that this information, like when we use the semantic tags, it helps the screen reader especially. So I just want to ask, like, how does it help them? Like, for example, if I am using a screen reader and if I am using section instead of a div, Does it help the screen reader to announce those things? Like, how does it help? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. It helps to announce that. You see here, I just opened up, I'll just show you. Right click, I went to inspect accessibility properties. This is a Firefox. In Firefox, installs built-in. So usually, accessibility is a separate tree. It's a separate tree rather than DOM. Okay, and
Got it.
okay, if you properly structure a replication, okay, ignore this generic. Generic is fine. Generic always comes. But if you see there is a heading, okay, so it will announce this is a heading. As you told, this is a section. It will announce this is a different section. Okay, then if it's an H2, it will know okay, this is a subheading. Okay, so and as I told you, speech API earlier in CSS, you can emphasize. Okay, for H2 this is the tone. For H1 this is the tone. For different section this is a tone. Okay, this is the decibel voice. With that modulation of speech also, you can make sure that the screen reader is aware. With dialogue especially, let's say you open up a dialogue, then you have to give the role of dialogue to it. So the user knows, okay, I opened up a dialogue. Okay, so
Got it.
different ways that accessibility tree will inform not just screen reader, any accessibility API driven application.
Got it. And in the next step that you talked about the ARIA examples, right? So my question is that if we keep the structure same, like having all the divs and just label them with area label, so will the result be the same or will still the semantic play some extra role?
Semantic, always go for semantic until unless you have requiring to use ARIA. ARIA is only where you are forced, okay, that I have to use text, and there's nothing that else I can do. Okay, and I'll even show you. In some place, they even tell you when not. Okay, I'm not able to find that, but they clearly mention that ARIA should be your last choice. First of all, try to make it semantic. If it is not being semantic, given constraints, then use ARIA.
Got it. Thanks so much.
And yeah, so I mean, do we have any measurement for accessibility? How we measure score or like that?
Yes, there are different applications. I think there is one. Yes. Check for issues. Check for issues. You can go here, check for issues, and that will let you know all the issues. I think this doesn't have any issues, but basically there will be dev tools which will help you, and there are certain apps which will also help you check your score, accessibility score. They'll just check for the rules. They'll just check your accessibility tree. Okay, and based on that tree, they'll give you a score. But that score alone will not just help you make it accessible. You should also test it with certain applications like voiceover and stuff.
I have another
So,
question.
yeah.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
man.
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
mean to
Okay.
speak on top of you. So you
Okay.
first please
Okay. I
finish your
got it.
question.
Okay. So, like, I have been worked on this ARIA label, that kind of thing, in making the website accessible. So, I have been working for months in this, but I don't know. There is a browser there. I know there is an accessibility tab present, but I mostly use the network tab to check whether the network speed and the data is correctly fetching from the API, or like is it the correct ARIA label is present in the browser? Is it identifiable? Like that only I thought, but today it was a new kind of thing. The browser itself checking all the issues and so it's kind of a new actually.
Yeah, that's why I use Firefox. Firefox. This is Firefox developer edition.
So
I
Firefox is
always use
based on
this.
Chromium, right? If I'm not wrong.
No. Gecko.
It's not based on Chromium engine.
Gecko. Different, not Chrome.
Recently, I got to know that Edge and Google Chrome are using the same
Correct.
Chromium-based
Yeah.
engine for rendering,
Yes.
but Firefox is kind of different. Then engine is different.
Yes.
Okay. So, like, the thing which I was asking is like, do you think like rendering the content using virtual DOM is better, or like doing it by not non-virtual DOM is better? Like some people say like React uses virtual DOM, so it will make the website slow if they add the content so much. It is only okay for using lightweight applications like with reusable components kind of thing. If you're not using reusable components, then it makes the website slow, like that they are saying. I don't know exactly because I have not that much in-depth knowledge in React actually. So only I'm asking, like, is it React a good thing to like work on large based enterprise applications, or Angular is better?
Again, totally depends on what your company or your architect in the company chooses. But mostly it's the answer is React, as I told you earlier, because of the community and because of the libraries that are built around React. That makes it easier for us to make any application. Let's say I want to use charts, I want to use tables, I want to use data grid, I want to use. It's very easy to do that with React. I think it's also doable in Angular. I'm not aware of that much, but it totally depends, and then you're not wrong in anything. Even if you go ahead and use Angular, you're not going to be wrong. Again also depends on your technical capabilities or of your team. If you're in your team, everyone knows React. Why you not go ahead with React and instead of going for something new? But
Yeah, I get
we
it.
have
Like
first
learning a new
question.
library is hard actually.
Correct. And you first question regarding virtual DOM and other things. So React came in 2013. At that time, this is the best way that they could think of rendering a UI fast. As of now, 10 years, it's already past 10 years. There are different ways of doing it. If you see there is Svelte, there is Solid.js, there is Quick. They have a different way of doing this. And according to them, virtual DOM is the overhead. Okay. And they may be right. They may be right. We'll see going forward if the trend changes and people change the library. But there will always be something new, which will be better than what was there previously. But you have to always make sure to use something which we know, okay, if I use this, I will not have any other issues. If I just start trying every new framework, and there will be 100 use cases that I want to have that with that framework. They will support 8 of them, 92 of them will not be supported, even though they're fast. Let's say they're 100%, not 100 times faster than React. But I have to create tables, I have to create charts, I want to do all those stuff. And I want a library which acts with that, but they are not able to support that. What good is to me, even if they're 100 times fast, if I cannot create applications?
Yeah, I truly get it. Like we need to check all the use cases whether the framework supports all kind of things. Then only we should do. Like the architect will mostly do this kind of
Correct,
thing, right? He only have the wisdom to do that, right?
exactly.
So yeah, like he will be knowing the main frameworks which are used and which will be apt for that particular business product like that.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
And coming to, more than 4 years of experience, does the framework expertise helps, or it's just,
Helps. Helps a lot. That was part of one of my side lines. It doesn't.
and yeah, we have, lot of resources. So how to plan to learn them one by one? Because I'm confused by seeing all these stuff. Lots of things are new for me, and I'm about to reach 4 years. We have discussed earlier as well, right? So yeah.
So that totally depends on your curiosity and your interest. Okay, I personally am very passionate about the field of work that I do. I am a very passionate web developer. Okay, so even if you just take this for instance, it's a long weekend. It's Saturday. It's 12:30, and I'm teaching people. So that tells about me that I'm very passionate about this. Okay, so and it's not about money. I didn't pay what you want. So it's totally about your passion of technology. If you don't have interest, if you don't have passion, you can't force it. But if you have it, you will make time for it. Okay, you will make time for it in the weekends or maybe half an hour, 1 hour, weekdays. It totally depends on your interest. What me or anyone else can do is give you a path, which I did today. That what you need to become a citizen. But how you make time for doing that, that is very subjective to you and on your interest.
Yeah, that is one thing. Sometimes laziness. Yeah.
Apurva, I just have another question. It's a two-part question, basically. I hope I'm not hogging too much of your time.
No, yes, and this will be the last one since we are already at 12:30. Yeah.
Yes. The final question is, so one thing that you didn't mention, that what role does a mentor play, especially in this transition of being a junior to senior engineer? Did you have a mentor? If yes, how did it help you? And if somebody wants to find a mentor, because sometimes when you are working in a remote company, it's very difficult to interact with people in your office. So what is the best way to find a mentor? That's the first part of the question. Second part is that since being a senior engineer myself, I've been working for like past 5.5 years. And most of the things that you have mentioned, I somewhat know all of them. So in the future, can I expect another webinar like how to leave this senior level realm to be a more advanced senior level? Like, can we expect another webinar on the same in the future? So yeah, that's it.
Good. Okay. So first I will answer the second one, which is webinar related. So I plan to create individual webinars of sections. That's each page had a lot of things. Let's say we're talking about even observability. This can be in a session itself. Talking about this thing, infrastructure. This can be multiple sessions. So I plan to take individual sessions on these individual stuff. Okay. So that's one thing. But what is more than this, even as of now, I don't know. So I don't know what to do. Right. So at my experience, this is what is required. And no, this will be more than enough for now. So but yeah, I do plan to take detailed sessions on each of them, on in the basically detail of all those things. So that is one. That's your second question. Question number one, yeah, that is regarding mentor, which is very good question. I would say, do I have a mentor? Did I have a mentor? No, I have never had a mentor. Second, but there's a but. I never had a dedicated mentor, but I always have online mentors. I follow certain people on Twitter, on different platforms, from whom I learn without even them knowing that they are teaching. One of them I'll say can't see dots, if you are aware of it.
Yes.
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 Yes. So I learn a lot of him. I learn a lot from him, his blogs, his tweets, okay, his videos. He kind of is an online mentor to me. Okay. Even though I have interacted with him once or twice with React India. But other than that, I have never had a one-on-one with him. Okay. But I consider him as one of my online mentors. Okay. Similar to him, there are a couple of others also, which I learn from, with their wisdom that they impart unknowingly on Twitter, mostly on Twitter. Okay.
Yes.
So Twitter has a lot of noise also. There's lots of politics and lafadas and all those. Like, you have to ignore
Yes.
that.
Yes.
You have to follow only people. You have to keep
Agreed.
your feed clean, basically. So you will know whom to follow, whom not to follow. So if you follow them, so I have online mentors or not, okay, but I never had a dedicated mentor as such who I could talk to when I want to. So that's what I try to become since last 2 or more than 2 years. That's what I am trying to be for lots of people. Okay, lots of people that do reach out to me. They have one-on-one with me. Some of them have become friends with me because they stay in Bangalore. I stay in Bangalore, and we just meet in the tech meetups or just like that. So yeah, that's what I try to be for others, what I have, and yeah, that's what I would say. And if you want to find a mentor, you should definitely check for someone who is definitely more experienced than you. Okay. Sometimes people say, there's one more thing. Always also learn from people who are younger to you. Your age doesn't matter. Someone always has something to teach. So
Correct.
I have even learned from people who are younger to me, but they know something else, which I don't know. The learning part, you learn from everyone. But if you're specifically looking for mentor to progress in your career, look for someone who is at least 3 to 4 years senior to you. Okay, and there are lots of mentors as of now. If you go into LinkedIn, you will see they will even mention it. Even I do mention that they are mentors and we love to. And if they are, there will be some link. If you go to my profile, you will see top mate link where you can book a session with me or something like that. Or if you just ask me on LinkedIn, I can just answer. There's no charging on there. So something like that, you can find mentors, or you can do like me. No, don't need to find any dedicated mentors. Just follow some leaders in software development who are there since more than 10 years, more than a decade of experience, who have experience in creating open source libraries, which are being used by millions of users. Okay, if you follow them, they have lots of knowledge to impart, and you can directly learn from them.
Got it. Yeah, like sometimes I think when you have someone to talk to, because as you mentioned, like there are a lot of people on Twitter who are imparting knowledge, but sometimes when you need a personal advice, right? Like if you are stuck with something, like I understand that being like consuming this generic information on Twitter really helps because I've been learning from all these people over the year, Kenzie Dodd, Matt Peacock, Adios on me, and all those people. So I think they are great. But like I think when you talk to someone one on one, as you mentioned, I think it really helps you a lot in that way, like trying to
Correct.
understand where you are going and guiding you a bit. So yeah, I understand that why. So yeah, thanks so much for
Then you
that.
can find from LinkedIn as well or talk with because
Yeah, I have already asked you a couple of questions on Twitter, and I think you have answered a couple of them. So yeah, thank you so much for that as well.
okay, now I remember your interaction.
Yes, yes,
I had mentioned that one life is not enough.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Um,
Thank you for the session. It was phenomenal, man. Thank you.
well, so for all of them who are asking for the slides, there's a bit delay. If you see it's in my localhost, I will deploy this and I will share the slides with you. Hopefully today I have all of your email ID, so don't worry about that. And it's not just about email ID, I'll share it on LinkedIn also. So you will get the slides, don't worry, and I'll include the links and everything. Okay. We are already over time, but I see one hand raised. You can please go ahead. But that will be the last.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Apurva. Thanks a lot for the session. First of all, like giving a time on the weekend. It was great. I have actually two questions, and the reason I actually kept it for last because one question is actually off track. It's not exactly related to senior engineering, front-end engineering, but yeah, related to programming and stuff. So first question is basically it's regarding the topic where it's just an in general question. How do you see or how do you define a transition of senior front-end engineering in terms of interpersonal skills like communication or technical skills is the point where we can still manage to learn. We can still there are a lot of resources and things where you can get a help, but how do you like maybe how do you see or how do you define that in terms of interpersonal skills?
Got it. Good. So you said two questions. This is the
Yeah, this is the first thing.
okay.
After
I'll
that,
answer. I'll answer. Okay.
yeah.
Right. So good question. So in terms of interpersonal skills is also very, very important, as you have very well mentioned it. So I'll tell you what certain kind of things that I think that are important is when you become a senior engineer, you have to take certain decisions. And even though you would have taken it doing certain calculations and certain informations, it is your job to answer to the people who question you on your that decision. Let's say you said, okay, we'll be going with this architecture, this pattern, this how we design the components. Now, your developers, junior developers, your developers, they can ask why this and why not this. There's certain thing that I think this is better and how can we do this. Then in that thing, you cannot say I have decided it, I have done my research and this is how you do it. You have to reason about it. You have to justify it. It is your job to reason about it. And even if what he is saying makes sense, then you should rethink on it. This is something which I would say is comes under interpersonal is how do you back up your decisions? Okay, how do you communicate your decisions effectively with others? Not just juniors, with seniors also. Let's say you take some decision, but there are seniors also involved in that project. Your managers, others people, right? Senior architects. You need to reason about your thinking. You should have a clear, concise way of communicating your technical understanding. Because see, technically coding, technically learning about architecture, that is the one thing. Another thing that is there is to be effectively able to communicate your technical understanding to someone else. Very, very important. Okay.
Yeah.
And this, if you want to practice, one thing is write articles. Write articles
Okay.
that will help you a lot in doing this, in effectively communicating to your technical understanding. And another
Okay.
interpersonal thing that I mentioned is that how to convince other people or how to justify your decisions. Okay. And you should always be okay. You should we given the trade-off. This is the trade-off. Because we are doing this, that's why this is the. If you are using this, you have to use it. If someone is suggesting you, then that okay, instead of this, can't we use this? Then you should take your time to do a proper research. Okay, and tell them okay, because of this we cannot do this. Or yeah, you have a good idea. Let me get back on it. And if that actually makes sense, then go ahead with that. So taking feedback and being able to communicate well, okay, that's what I would say consists in your interpersonal skill. At least that's what I can think as of now. I hope that
Okay.
answers the
Okay.
question.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Thanks a lot. So moving on to next question. So other question is actually it's bit off track. You may, I mean, you may choose not to answer, but so basically, I was recently when GitHub Copilot launched, so I tried it, and also recently I was, and I was just curious, so I was trying that and reading about it. Uh, so it's basically, I just want to understand, or it's just a general, kind of discussion. What is your take on GitHub Copilot? Like, we can see now, given the tight integration we have and the context to give, it actually helps a lot to, ease our task in terms of, for an example, it may be just as simple as you have a component, you have written changes in the component, you have done those changes, and it might directly help you to write the test case, like generate the test case automatically. So yeah, in general discussion, what's your take on how do you see that in terms of future of engineering as a web developer?
Again, a good question. One thing I would say is to refrain from using it until unless you are at least 3 to 4 years of experience. The reason being, you might be able to get the code and you might be able to get the job done. You might even be able
Mhm.
to get it across the review. Some might even
Mhm.
not review that much code. They might not know everything. They know they are fine. But going forward, you will not know the best ways to do it. And let's say today you wrote a code from GitHub Copilot, and you shipped it, and you thought it's a good code, and somehow it went through the reviews also. Next time, you will argue with someone that no, it already went. This is the best way of doing it, and I already done it. It's already in production. But someone missed to review it that time. Doesn't mean that it's right now. And you'll be under the impression that okay, this is the right way of doing it. Okay, without even knowing that okay, was this the right way? It works. It does work. Okay, but whether it's the right way of doing it or not, it might backfire to you in future. It might create a bug which it might come later. Okay, so that's why I would say refrain from using it unless you're senior engineer. I'd say at least 3 to 4 years. Okay, and once you're senior engineer, you use it for very menial
Mhm.
task as you mentioned, as you correctly mentioned, for unit tests. You can definitely use it for unit test, but do not use it for writing your logic, business logic. Okay, maybe some utils is fine. Some random utils converting date time or some utils you want to do, fine. Okay, use it. No worries. But for business logic, I would recommend you doing on your phone because sometimes when you say okay, this is correct, 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 you might miss something. Okay, and I've seen this. I've literally seen this. We do use Copilot. Okay, I mostly use it for autocomplete and unit tests. Only use it. Okay, so but it does not have the context. Even if I try, it cannot code my application. It will fail miserably with that. But yeah, it can do unit test only that also of only utils. It cannot unit test my components. That also is very tough for it to do.
Mhm.
It does lack context. But going as you told, what do I see with the future is that earlier, let's say we have a team of 10 to do 2 projects. Going forward, two things can happen. Either that team will be reduced to 5 or 4, which when everyone will be given a co-pilot, a very better version of co-pilot, not the one we have, way better version of co-pilot. Okay, either that can happen, or the team will remain same, but instead of those 10 people working on 2 projects, it will be 10 people working on 10 projects. Okay, because
Right.
that's what it does. It helps you boost your productivity. If your productivity is boosted, then your company would want to deliver 10 features a year instead of 2 features a year. Okay, because everyone wants to earn money. So it will not replace your jobs. That's the thing that people are concerned about. And as far as I know, again, I can be wrong, but I don't think it will replace our job. It will just help us become more productive. Okay, but you should be able to leverage it. You should not be like me, "मुझे use नहीं करना है, I don't like it, and it's all."
Right.
You should be able to leverage it also. Okay, so yeah, that's my.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Cool. Thank you everyone for joining and staying till this long. As everyone has mentioned, I will be sharing the slide with you. I have just one request. Please share feedback on topic. That would really help me. Okay, and I will be conducting more such sessions. So do stay tuned wherever you found out about the session. Mostly, I think LinkedIn or Twitter. There exactly is where I'll be posting about it. So yeah, stay tuned, and I wish you a happy long weekend. Thank you everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.